The U.S. is in a new Cold War with China, but it is very complicated in the sense the U.S. wants to try and crush China, but at the same time, China is so big and so powerful economically and is really modernizing humanity in a way that the United States is not. This does not mean I agree with everything the Chinese government does. There is clearly censorship in China, but there's censorship in the United States as well. And I'm living proof of that. Yeah, I'm not in prison. There's an endless number of people in China, in fact, millions upon millions, who criticize the government there. And guess what? They're not in prison. Okay. That's not how it works there either. Now, at times, China has arrested people just like at times the U.S. has. There are political prisoners in the U.S. right now. And there's Julian Assange right now locked up due to the U.S. One of the big it was a propaganda win, but I don't mean that makes it his fault. Propaganda win for the West was and maybe continues to be, I don't know. But, well, actually, I'm going to show that maybe not. The artist Weiwei. Now, most of you have heard of Weiwei, Chinese artist. I think he does really cool work. I like it. I'm a fan, but I am no art scholar. He's hugely promoted by the West simply because he's Chinese, and he criticizes at times the Chinese government, and that has at times gotten him arrested by the Chinese government. And I do not think they're fans of Weiwei. But the West is fans of Weiwei, and they have heavily promoted his exhibits and made sure that he's perhaps one of the only Chinese artists that you or I could name, or many people can name. Here he is, maybe realizing or choosing just now to comment on the fact that Western censorship is actually more concealed and poses a greater threat than Chinese censorship. Chinese artist and activist Weiwei, whose gallery delayed his show after he tweeted about the Israel-Hamas war, said recently that censorship in the West poses a greater threat due to how it operates in a more concealed, solid, and enduring manner. It was such a pity how, this is a quote, in universities, in the media, political sector, everywhere, you cannot talk about the truth. And I guess he's right there referencing Israel's genocide. Reported suspension of New York University professor Thomas Skiba, I think, for posts made on Instagram about the Israel-Hamas war, genocide. Weiwei also discussed the cancellation of an exhibition of his work at Lisan Gallery last year after posting a tweet about the Israel-Hamas war in Mandarin. He has been censored by the Western world for tweeting about Israel's genocide. And it's a pretty light tweet, too. I think this was the tweet. The sense of guilt around the persecution of the Jewish people has been at times transferred to offset the Arab world. He didn't use the word genocide, I'll tell you that much. This is what many people have said about, yes, there is censorship in China, but there's censorship in the U.S. as well. And for anybody who doesn't know, I've had my TV show sanctioned into oblivion. I lost my main YouTube channel, was banned around the world. Lost my podcast on Spotify, was banned permanently. It's back up under the name The Leecamp Show. My TikTok was banned permanently recently. And most of my other stuff is heavily suppressed. Now, thank you guys so much for watching right now and helping my show to grow despite all of the censorship, despite all of the suppression. But the idea that we don't have censorship in the U.S. or in the West is laughable. And it is aggressive, but it is done in a more sneaky, more nefarious way. Here in the West, people think they have freedom of speech, as we see Julian Assange tortured in prison, as we see Mumia Abu-Jamal has been on death row for years and years, having been framed. He was a journalist before he was framed for a murder. Having seen other people who speak the truth, whether it be Chelsea Manning or John Kiriakou, put into prison for revealing the truth. And many of us, like myself, are not arrested. We're just censored. And so here you have one of the biggest propaganda tools, and I don't think that was his doing, but propaganda tools of the West, Chinese artist Weiwei, saying that Western censorship is more concealed and poses a greater threat than Chinese censorship. I think I was reading a Caitlin Johnstone article, and she referenced I guess this is a well-known joke about this from back during the Soviet Union days, about a Russian guy on a plane flying to America. He's sitting next to an American, and he says, what brings you to the U.S.? And he says, I want to learn about American propaganda. And the American says, What propaganda? And the Russian says, exactly. Meaning, we Americans don't even seem to know we're being propagandized to, which is pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing. They've succeeded at making us think that we don't face propaganda.